Welcome to part 3 of this series on the masculine archetypes. We've covered the hero and the lover so far, and in this episode we're going to be exploring how to awaken the magician archetype. In the previous episodes, I explained this concept of archetypes in more depth, and I'm not going to repeat that here. So if you didn't see those episodes, they're definitely worth going back to watch after you're done here, and also to integrate this understanding of the hero and the lover. And next week, I'm going to be covering the king archetype to round off this series. My name's Jasper Brown, and welcome to The Conscious Masculine. In this episode, I want to give you guys an overview of the magician, the qualities and the shadows that he possesses, as well as some very concrete and specific examples that you can actually find in literature and in film and even in the real world throughout history. Some very interesting characters for you to observe and study and even emulate. I'm also going to give you guys towards the end a step-by-step process that can enable you to start really embodying the qualities of the magician in your own life. So make sure you stick with me for that. Let's start now with a bit of groundwork by really understanding an overview of the magician archetype before we go into the specific qualities. So the magician is this very profound symbol within the realm of archetypes. He represents transformation, knowledge, and the ability to channel energy into creation and change. This archetype can be found across various cultures and mythologies and time periods. He often embodies this role of the wise guide, the healer, and the innovator. The magician is associated with the ability to harness this unseen force that underpins reality or the world, using his wisdom and skill to create change and influence the people around him. Magicians are often seen as alchemists, sages, and visionaries who transcend the normal limitations that we all have and tap into this unseen, somehow, mystery of the universe. They really symbolize the power of transformation, connection to the subtle realms of existence, and the pursuit of spiritual enlightenment. In terms of core attributes and specific character traits, first and foremost, wisdom and knowledge is really the defining characteristic of the magician. Magicians are seekers of truth and wisdom, delving deeply into the mysteries of the universe to gain insight and understanding. They have a deeply curious mind that really leads them towards lifelong learning, introspection, and contemplation. They expose themselves to diverse perspectives and experiences because they somehow intuit that it's only through a very, very open mind that one can ever access the truth. And they understand that learning is actually about perspective taking. That if we're ever to really understand and map out reality in a comprehensive way, we need to be able to put ourselves into all manner of different perspectives, just like we would take off and put on different clothes. They don't get rigidly stuck in their belief system, their worldview, their dogmatic ideology. They're much more open-minded than that, because they see that wisdom is really a gradual process of attuning themselves towards the highest values. And that's really like the hallmark of wisdom, is being able to separate the high from the low and not getting stuck or not getting confused thinking that the lower values are actually the most important values. A wise person has a sense of what is the correct thing and what is the incorrect thing? What is the right path? What is the wrong path? What is the higher path? What is the lower path? And the magician embodies that in the way that he approaches life. The magician sees knowledge as power. So it's through their pursuit of knowledge that they gradually uncover very profound secrets and the mysteries that underpin life, reality, and the universe. And it's really this which sets them apart from ordinary people. And the majority of people, let's say. They're often scholars, philosophers, and spiritual leaders who seek to illuminate the world and other people with their knowledge. The next characteristic is transformation and change. So at the heart of the magician archetype is the ability to transform, to create change in themselves and in the world. The magician is a character who is somehow constantly evolving and integrating new information, and he's expanding his mind constantly in the pursuit of understanding reality. And in this way, he possesses an almost alchemical capacity, a paranormal capacity of sorts. In the spiritual traditions, these are known as siddhis, paranormal powers that great yogis and sages and saints were able to achieve by applying themselves to profound, dedicated practice over long periods of time. They gradually uncover these abilities which actually just appear like magic to those who are uninitiated. And in order to actually understand this, one needs to progress beyond materialism, beyond rationality, and the current sort of scientific, materialistic paradigm that we live in, which kind of seeks to reduce everything down to atoms and molecules and things that can be measured, put in a test tube or deconstructed in a lab. The magician is able to see beyond this stage of development and doesn't think that this is the absolute truth. He's able to access trans-rational states of consciousness in which he goes beyond rationality. He's deeply intuitive. He sees synchronicities in the world, and he understands their profound significance. And really, the magician understands that the way that we relate and interact with reality shapes our reality. And in understanding that, the magician learns how to manipulate the forces of nature, turning potential into reality through their actions and through their very powerful intentions that they set. The next quality is innovation and creativity. So magicians really think outside the box, and they are very comfortable challenging conventions and norms that usually keep others very stuck, very limited and closed-minded. The magician is able to flick all of that aside and somehow go against the grain. So for this reason, magicians are outliers within humanity that somehow exist at the edge of the bell curve. Most people are here in this, the magicians are at the fringe. So they display what is the opposite of the herd mentality. If everyone is doing this, the magician will find a completely different direction to go, almost just by principle, because the magician does not conform to groupthink. They go against the status quo, but with wisdom, when the situation demands. because of a higher order of purpose, rationality, logic, intuition, intelligence. So they're not rigid. The magician isn't bound by rules, social conventions, dogma, tradition, ideology. And they bring new ideas and perspectives, using their creativity to solve the problems that they face in life in very creative and even genius-like ways. They're able to synthesize information very quickly, adding it to their somehow vast repertoire of knowledge. And then they use that deeply innovative mind capacity to inspire others and to achieve their goals. The next quality of the magician is spiritual insight. So the magician archetype often embodies spiritual insight and enlightenment. Magicians are connected to higher consciousness, and they strive to elevate their own understanding as well as those of the people around them, guiding them on a path of spiritual growth. So from this perspective, the magician embodies the highest wisdom. He's able to penetrate through the illusory nature of reality to access the highest truth. To put that in a more simple way of explaining it, he understands that reality is like an infinite mind, the mind of God. And he is just playing this character within the great game of creation. So he doesn't get stuck and overly fixated on his egoic identity. He's able to transcend that and see the bigger picture of reality. That reality is in fact one infinite mind. And he is just a node within that mind. Now that's a very deep topic to go into, which I'm not going to go unbox too much here, but that's the truth, which you can discover for yourself. And the magician is a man who, or a being who intuits that and understands that and is questing towards that, which is the most profound realizations that we can have. The next quality and characteristic is healing and restoration. So the magicians are healers who use their knowledge and skill to bring healing and restoration to individuals and to communities. They're deeply connected to the life force of the planet. And they understand the rhythms, patterns, and cycles of nature. And because of the wisdom that they have and the knowledge that they embody, the magician truly understands life. And as such, he's actually not afraid to face death. He often possesses the ability to heal physical, emotional, and spiritual wounds that people might have, as well as he might have. And that makes the magician a profoundly beneficial character to embody. Because not only is he wise, but he's also good. The magician is a master of ceremony and initiation. He unites the intuitive and the logical aspects of the mind. He knows how to use He knows how to use and really direct the energies of the body, the psyche, and the mind in beneficial ways, and how all of these somehow entwine. He has a very integrative understanding of that. Magicians empower themselves and others by unlocking hidden potential and revealing the true nature of reality. He is a storyteller who weaves the information, insights, and wisdom of his mind into a compelling narrative that really inspires others to recognize their own wisdom, their own inner power, their latent capabilities, and helps them to awaken the deeper aspects of their character so they can navigate the complexities of life. And that's why the magician is so often seen as the mentor and the guide, because they lead others on a journey of self-discovery and growth. Now, in the hero episode that I did in this series, we discussed this example of Gandalf and Frodo. Frodo being the hero and Gandalf being the wise mentor. Gandalf obviously embodies the magician archetype in a very profound and amazing way. Magicians often act very selflessly. They use their gifts and their knowledge to the benefit of others and the greater good. Because one of the highest wisdoms that we can achieve is selflessness. Because if you had access to the absolute truth, the separate self, this finite self, dissolves because it's infinite. You become infinite. That is the mind of God, in a certain sense, is an infinite mind. And then this separate form of self, this limited identity, dissolves. It's just a figment of consciousness, an imagination, essentially. A dream. So because the magician has a very profound connection to the highest wisdom, he sacrifices his own personal needs, his own egoic desires in service of helping others and supporting the greatest good he can find. The magician is really motivated by this profound desire to improve the world and uplift those around them. It's very powerful and a beautiful purpose and values to aspire towards, these ones that the magician holds. The magician really embodies and integrates science with spirituality. It's not just rigidly spiritual, it's seeing the deep wisdom within science that we can access, and also seeing the limitations of science, which it has yet to blossom into, and eventually sees that science and spirituality are actually coming together and will be, in fact, one in the future. The magician is interested in the truth with a capital T, not the lower relative truth, but the absolute truth. He's able to dive deeply into the mysteries of the outer world as well as his own inner world. The magician really embodies tier 2 values and capabilities in the spiral dynamics model of conscious evolution and consciousness, the development of consciousness. This is stage yellow and stage turquoise, which is the top 2 stages in that model. The magician is really an integrative mind. So he's able to see, as I've described already, the truth in every perspective. He's able to integrate all of the different perspectives together and form a holistic understanding of everything. He's able to see complex systems and understand how they function. And he's able to see the unity in the whole of reality instead of just getting fixated on constituent parts. In order to get to that, it's imperative that he is not dogmatic, he's not ideological, and he's able to lucidly assess every different perspective to find and extract the kernel of truth within every perspective. That doesn't mean all perspectives are equal, because in order for all perspectives to be true, they can't all be equally true somehow. So he's able to see and pass and differentiate and assess the relative truth within every perspective and see how that fits into the overall absolute perspective, the absolute truth. And because of this understanding, the magician has a very beautiful state of humbleness. He has this long-term vision. He sees deeply into the heart of issues, deeply into the future. He's very compassionate to the suffering of others. And because of this, he's really motivated to act in the interest of the highest good. The magician is kind, he's loving, and he sees through the illusions of self-bias and the mind. So those are the qualities of the magician that I wanted to elucidate. Now let's look at some of the shadow aspects of the magician's character, because these are somehow very fascinating to observe. And as I go through this list, you'll perhaps identify some of these characteristics within yourself. And I'll explain how that ties in with everything when I give you the steps to actually embodying the magician archetype. So the first shadow characteristic is manipulation. So when the magician hasn't yet integrated his shadows, he can become manipulative. He can use his powers and his knowledge and his special skills for personal gain or to control other people. The misuse of his power can lead to ethical dilemmas and moral corruption. Now, as we know, power has a vast potential to corrupt the people who wield it, which this is kind of difficult for people to understand who haven't tasted power. Because it's only once you have the power that you actually get exposed to the incredible temptation to abuse that power, which has this tendency to corrupt. That's why absolute power corrupts absolutely, as we've seen in so many historic examples. So with this vast power that the magician starts to accumulate, especially as he deepens his skill and evolves into this being of tremendous wisdom and power, he gets subjected to significant tests. And any unintegrated wounds or character flaws that he might still have that haven't yet been ironed out, they can easily be magnified under the influence of his special status, his authority, and the power that he wields, which really this can lead the magician to using his powers to achieve his own selfish needs by manipulating other people. And the image that comes to mind here when I express this is the puppet master, who is like behind the scenes in the shadows, pulling the strings and making this character, the puppet, to dance somehow. The next shadow element of the magician is deception. So the magician might resort to hiding their true intentions, deceiving people and leading others astray. This manifests as trickery, dishonesty, lying, false information, undermining trust and integrity with the people that he's around. And it's really motivated from his fear. his fear of somehow losing his power or being overshadowed by others creates this desire in him to keep others small and keep them disempowered, thereby sort of maintaining his own superiority. So he uses his powers to confuse and deceive the people around him in service of his own selfish agenda. And this will become more concrete when I give you the specific examples that I'll have for you in just a minute. So the next character flaw, the shadow, the unintegrated part, is arrogance. So magicians can be very arrogant because they believe themselves to be superior due to their knowledge and the abilities and the skills that they've acquired. And in a certain sense, they are superior, but there is a certain attachment to the grandioseness. They have this infatuation with their own power. And that creates arrogance. And this arrogance distances them from other people, which hinders their personal growth and in a certain way corrupts the knowledge that they have attained. Now, in terms of an example, the best example that I could think of for you guys is Saruman from Lord of the Rings, who uses his magic to assert dominion over Middle-earth and raises his armies on behalf of Sauron. This is a really good example of the shadows of the magician, where the power that he wields corrupts him. Another example is Loki, the brother of Thor, who many times tries to betray Thor and stabs him in the back and tricks him because of his own lust for power. And in many ways, we can see Loki has suffered from living in Thor's shadow. And he was like the problem child who, because he couldn't be better than Thor, he decided to become badder in a certain sense. So this is interesting to observe because these tendencies exist not only within film characters, but also within ourselves. And on our path towards higher knowledge and higher development and spiritual wisdom, we will face these tests. The next shadow quality is denial. So a man who, denies his own power. He shirks his responsibility, suppresses his knowledge in a certain way to camouflage perhaps his jealousy or his unintegrated desires. He pretends to somehow not know, and he finds excuses in the hope of somehow being seen as the innocent. And all of this is basically an escape from acknowledging his true power and his higher purpose. So it's interesting to see how these shadows corrupt the sort of archetypal and virtuous qualities of the magician. And in terms of our work here, we need to be very careful of the shadows inside of ourselves, because the shadows can really mess up the whole process of development that we're going through. And if we're not careful, if we don't pay attention to this, if we don't integrate the shadows that have manifested or still hold space within us somewhere, this can ruin your whole life. And magicians, or this archetypal expression of the magician, who fail to integrate their shadows, wind up as pretty weird characters. Warped, strange. And in the real world, these these people actually become cult leaders. They become mad scientists. They chase after money, sex, power, and status instead of orienting themselves towards the highest realizations and the highest good. And there are plenty of gurus and spiritual leaders out there who failed this test. And if you want to see some very interesting examples, just go start watching cult documentaries. Most of the very charismatic, narcissistic leaders who wind up creating very high control groups are, in a certain sense, the magician archetype who failed his tests, who wound up, perhaps started with something very beautiful, very pure, very amazing spiritual realizations, but ended up slowly over time getting corrupted by the power that they wielded. And you can see some great examples of this in documentaries like Wild Wild Country with Osho. There's another great one about the Twin Flames cult called Escaping Twin Flame. Very interesting characters. And then we've got Teal Swan. There's a documentary in the Deep End, I think it's called. Very interesting character. Amazing spiritual capacities and qualities, but also in such a position of power and influence. It's very interesting to see what that does to a person who started off as very pure intentioned and somehow good, and how the necessities of somehow maintaining that power and authority lead to certain corruptions, certain controlling, manipulative, narcissistic kind of tendencies, the exploitation of the people around them. It's very interesting to observe this. And I myself have been in high control spiritual groups and observed people with profound spiritual capacities using and manipulating their power in ways that were very harmful and toxic. And it's really worth studying these examples and looking at how the integration of our shadows can mess things up and take us in weird, twisted directions. This is super useful because we can learn so much from the mistakes of others. And in a certain way, if someone has started a cult, there's already something wrong. They missed some steps. They've failed to safeguard their followers from turning them into this idol and putting them on the pedestal. And they got seduced by that power. And it happens all the time. Even people who are trying to not start a cult wind up starting a cult. Because there's a very interesting dynamic between the being of power, the being who has this wisdom and embodies the knowledge, and in a certain sense is superior in a certain way. They have access to some superior truth. And the dynamic that gets created by them, who is up here, and that all of their followers, the mass of the followers who basically are hungry and searching to find someone to idolize and worship. And so that takes a very mature approach, a very mature and careful being who is very wise to basically inoculate the followers and basically make sure that they don't put this person on the pedestal. Because if someone is truly wise, they don't even want to be on the pedestal. They don't want the power. It's like reluctantly they accept the responsibility because they know how many pitfalls, how many tests and traps there are within such an endeavor. So these examples, these kind of leaders, failed leaders, false gurus, cult leaders, and these kind of things are very interesting examples. And I think that's great sort of illustration of the magician archetype, where it can get a bit skewed and go a bit wrong. Also the mad scientists, people who sort of have an incredible wisdom and knowledge, but a lack of moral integrity. These are very interesting characters to study as well. Now let's look at some of the positive examples of the magician archetype in myth and in media. So we've got Merlin from King Arthur, Doctor Strange embodies the magician, Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, one of the most beloved and archetypal examples of the magician that you'll ever find. Of course, we've got Albus Dumbledore from Harry Potter, and another good one here is Yoda from Star Wars, who really embodies the magician. And as we can see, so many of these archetypal representations of the magician are playing this role of the mentor in the hero's journey. It's definitely worth going to check out that episode to really understand the steps and stages of the hero's journey and how they unfold. For us, as we move through life, we're going on our own hero's journeys, and it's very useful for us to be able to see the steps and stages and how they correlate to the tests and challenges that we go through. And yeah, every hero has mentors. And those mentors, if you are wise, you choose mentors who really embody the magician archetype in a very pure way, because they're going to lead you, like Gandalf did, in the right direction. In terms of real life public figures, I wanted to give you guys not just sort of mythological or film-based examples, but I wanted to give you some real-life people who I think really embody the magician archetype. For this, we have people like Albert Einstein, Carl Jung, who was the psychoanalyst who really popularized this concept of archetypes in the collective unconscious of humanity. So he manifested the magician archetype. Nikola Tesla was another great example, the genius inventor who made these groundbreaking scientific discoveries. We've got people like Steve Jobs, who had a certain visionary capacity to see like what humanity needed, and brought this technological innovation that really transformed and changed the whole of society in so many ways. We can really see these geniuses, these innovators, visionaries, really embodying the magician. And more spiritual examples include people like Rumi, the Sufi mystic, poet, Ram Dass, Swami Vivekananda, Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher who founded the Tao Te Ching. And there are many, many others. There's a huge long list. So it's very interesting to study these characters and their philosophies, their teachings, the wisdom that they embodied, because that wisdom is so profound that it echoes through the ages. And that's really the peak expression of the magician archetype. He influences the world in positive, beneficial ways because he's uncovered these profound mysteries, created, invented in a certain mysterious, visionary way, something that humanity truly needed and that helped humans take an evolutionary leap. This is the real sort of grounded embodiment of the magician in its purest form. So we can take a lot of inspiration from these characters, and I in my own life certainly have, and continue to study these people and to emulate them in a certain way. And that's in a certain way, that's what I'm trying to do with this medium and the podcast and these episodes, is to really start to put myself on a path of developing my magician qualities, to awaken this archetype within myself, to study and invest and compound my knowledge into a format that really spreads and supports the evolution of other beings. And this is just obviously just the beginning. If you're listening to this now, this is, what are we, episode 13 or something like this. I can see the path ahead is, if I commit to this for a decade or multiple decades of honing this as a craft, that this will turn me into a very wise being, because I'm forced to study and teach and integrate and share these insights and connect all of these ideas and synthesize it and include stories and examples. And that's my own path towards embodying the magician. And you will have to find your own ways. What is your path going to be? What does that look like for you? And for that, I'm going to give you guys some specific steps now. So the first step to awakening the magician archetype within your own life is to pursue knowledge and wisdom. You have to embrace lifelong learning and seek out new experiences, new perspectives, new thought systems, new philosophies. You need to cultivate curiosity and commit to developing a radically open mind. You need to constantly be expanding your understanding. You don't have the luxury of settling for mental masturbation or armchair philosophy. You actually need to get your hands very dirty in this process and be somehow ruthless in your approach, determined, consistent. You need to find that spark within you which is hungry for knowledge. And then you need to go out there and structure your life around it, as I am doing. You also need to embody the wisdom and orient yourself towards the highest values that you can find and aspire towards. This is super important. You actually need to get clear on what your values are and then start orienting and actually really building your life around the attainment of the highest values. This is not something you can just do as a hobby, as a kind of something on the side. This needs to be a major focus for you. The next step is to embrace creativity and innovation. You actually need to foster creativity within yourself. You need to think outside the box. You need to question everything. You need to question the conventions of your society, the norms and rules that you follow. You need to question your own beliefs. You need to question your own self-bias. And don't worry, I'm going to have episodes on all of this moving forward in the future. And you really need to use your imagination to solve problems. First of all, start with the problems in your life. And then start expanding that out to help and solve problems for other people. And in doing so, find a way to inspire others. Use stories. Use your journey as an inspiration. Use the knowledge that you uncover to motivate yourself and those around you and improve your life and the lives of those around you. And again, you need to do this actively, which means you need a routine, you need discipline towards creativity and innovation. It doesn't just happen by accident. Of course it can, but that's an amateur approach. That's that's never going to really get you somewhere consistently over time. Anyone who is a brilliant savant, a genius creator or inventor or a visionary, they worked at that. It was like a job. They had a specific process. They dedicated time on a daily basis. They cleared their life of distractions and procrastination, and they actually honed it as a craft. Creativity is a process that we put our mind through. You actually need to sit down and carve out time to contemplate, meditate, journal, educate yourself, and then bring all of the threads of that education into your creative process and apply that consistently over time with dedication and focus. And really, the magician the character is never bored. As a magician, you are never bored because you are too fascinated by life. There is always something to discover. There is always something to be studying. You are always busy creating. There's no downtime to fall into depression or boredom because you're so present with the mystery that you are yet to uncover. You know that there is incredible truths waiting to be discovered by you. You just have to find it and bring it and put it together and somehow construct it and understand it. And that's like every time you do that, it's unlocking something. It's like the vast key that unlocks the universe, and slowly the doors are cracking open. That's the process. That's how I feel it. The next step is to practice mindfulness and spirituality. So the magician is not going to be complete without a deep connection to his self, your inner self. And we can only get that through dedicated mindfulness practices, meditation, psychedelics. These are the most powerful tools. These are the most highest yielding practices and skills that we need to practice and devote ourselves to, and consistently do that over time to unlock the mind, to slowly peel back all of the rigid blinders that we keep on, that we've been conditioned with by our society. This has to all be like pried apart, pulled apart, deconstructed, ripped off, in order to actually open the potential of our mind. This is needed because without this sort of dedication to these practices, you're going to stay stuck, and it will be very hard to access the states of open-mindedness that you need in order to discover the radical truths that exist, that are at this point in time out of your grasp. Awakening, spiritual awakening, is the most radical state of open mind that you can possibly have. Your mind becomes infinite. But in order to actually reach that, you need to have done some work. You need to prepare yourself. You need to build up to it. And trust me, it's worth it. It's the most worth it thing you can ever pursue, because you wake up. You wake up and you realize that the life that you thought you were living and all of this and the way that you thought reality was is just 180 degrees the opposite. And that revelation, that discovery of the truth, is the most ecstatic happiness and fulfillment that you can ever achieve. So the magician, if you want to awaken this archetype and you want to develop yourself in this way, you need to cultivate a very deep fascination and a deep drive to explore your own consciousness, your own mind. And that means having a daily practice. This means doing retreats, spending time in solitude, contemplating deeply, studying a wide array of teachings and paths to find the techniques and the practices that actually work for you. But in order to do that, you need to have the courage to experiment and expose yourself to many different techniques, because you don't know what's right and what's wrong. You can't just trust other people. You actually need to become your own highest authority. Everything gets qualified and filtered through your own mind. And you don't just accept easy answers given to you by some guru, some teacher, some expert. Don't listen to me even. I'm just pointing you in a direction. I don't want you to take anything that I'm saying as an ideology. I want you to test this stuff for yourself. You need to put all of this stuff into practice yourself and discover what actually works for you. I could be full of shit. You have no idea. Anyone who has authority could be full of shit. You do not know if what they're telling is the truth or not until you validate it for yourself. The next step is cultivating healing and compassion. So on this path, in order to avoid some of the shadows that we've talked about, it's really important that we discover these abilities to first and foremost heal ourselves and integrate our own shadows, the wounds that we carry, especially the psychological and emotional ones, because these are the most hidden somehow, the least, they're sort of operating in a subconscious way. So we need to develop the capacity to heal ourselves and to integrate our shadows and the undeveloped sides of ourselves. And in that process, we need to have a lot of compassion. We have to have an openness, a certain vulnerability, the ability to tune in to what we feel, so we don't just become disconnected. We don't become mad scientists or cult leaders. We want to develop the empathy and compassion that prevents us from doing that, as well as the integrity that's necessary. The magician really understands that health and healing is about bringing balance and harmony into systems that are out of alignment. The best place to observe that and to study that and to practice that is with our own body, starting on the physical level, starting with diet, with exercise, nutrition, supplementation, sun, sleep, time in nature. Because once we have that, the physical level working well, then the energetic starts to improve. Emotionally, we start to improve, and that's where we can start to then balance the emotional side of ourselves with much more ease. Our relationships harmonize, and then we're slowly expanding outwards. Health starts within by bringing balance to the system that we have direct control over on a daily basis, and that's like the temple. We need to clean the temple. And then we're going to expand that out into the suburbs and the district and the city around us, into our home, into our family, into our community, and into the world. The magician understands that health is about balance within, bringing harmony within, and then spreading that to the systems that we are within or a part of. The next quality is really developing self-awareness and integrity. So it's really important that we regularly reflect on our actions and motivations. We want to strive for self-awareness and a deep relationship with the value of integrity. In order to do that, we need to recognize our strengths, our weaknesses. We need to align our actions with our values, feelings, and beliefs. That is also a complex process that takes time. And if you don't know what your core values are, in your life yet, you're going to struggle with integrity. You'll also struggle with your life purpose. And you'll find it very easy to get lost and pulled in different directions and wind up with all manner of random beliefs and following conspiracy theories and joining cults or becoming deeply ideologically religious. Which is a problem, because that is like putting the blinders back on. We want to do this. And if you don't know what your values are, it's very easy to get influenced by all of the forces out there in the world who want to pull you into their value system. Your culture, our cultures and countries are doing this. Religious organizations are doing this. There's all manner of influencers and so-called gurus who are trying to do this. And as I said before, you want to become your own authority. You want to be autonomous. You want to be interdependent. And the more self-aware you become, the more your focus is going to shift towards the highest truths and the highest values. And it's really important that you define those for yourself, because that's true wisdom. The magician isn't beholden to anyone. The magician is his own master. That's what this archetype is all about. He's the master of space and time and his own destiny. He's nobody's fool. Let's put it that way. So that's it. I'm almost done with this episode. If you got this far, I hope you've enjoyed this synthesis of the magician archetype and the qualities and the steps to embodying him in your life. I've found this to be very fulfilling, this avenue of study and development, and using the archetypes to fill in certain gaps in my own development. That's why they're so archetypal. It's almost like we got this little map, this blueprint for developing ourselves in a certain direction. I've spent many years honing the hero and the lover. The magician is more like my most recent endeavor, especially with the since my spiritual journey really started, since starting this podcast and really stepping into the teacher position to mentor other men who are on this path and want to embody these qualities in their own life. So I hope you're with me on for the rides. This is going to get more and more interesting the deeper we go, and as I really build out this sort of large sort of body of teachings and knowledge, I hope you guys will, that this will really support your own development, your own growth and journey to becoming the highest version of yourself in this life. If you want to surround yourself with other men who are doing this work and you don't want to be the lone wolf, you might like to come and join the Conscious Masculine, my men's community, my membership community. We're meeting online over Zoom on a weekly basis, 2 different time zones every week, having these kind of discussions with other men. It's very supportive, very uplifting, and we really get to do a lot of the practical elements that I talk about here. It's not just theory, but we really work together to really start embodying these qualities. And we talk a lot about the archetypes, especially at the moment. I've also got one-on-one coaching that I offer for those of you that are in a position to really invest in mentorship and are looking for someone to mentor you and support your development, whether that's in the bedroom, in your relationship, in your life, with your career and your sense of purpose. These are the sort of areas of expertise that I really help men to deal with. And one-on-one mentorship has been such a profound part of my own journey of development, which has really helped me immensely. That's where I really see men getting the best results, is when they have a combination of online materials supporting their growth and direct accountability and mirroring and feedback from someone like me who can be in that position for you. It doesn't have to be me, it can be anyone. But the most important thing is finding someone that you really resonate with, that you feel is embodying the qualities that you want to acquire, and then spending time with that person on a regular basis and getting their feedback. So if that's interesting to you, you'll find the links for the men's community and also the one-on-one coaching that I offer in the description of this video or under the podcast if you're listening to the podcast. I just want to thank you guys so much for all your support. I'm getting a lot of great feedback about what I've created so far, and that it's really landing and really offering you guys a lot of insights and a lot of value. So I'm really grateful for all of the feedback and the support. It really means the world to me. So thank you. Please share this with someone who needs to hear it or might like it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and give us a like. That really helps, or leave a comment. And lastly, I want to leave you guys with a couple of final insights, as I always do, just to round this episode off and to leave things on a high note. So the magician archetype, it's pointing us towards something fundamental in human development. The hero is pointing us towards developing autonomy, answering the call to adventure, and achieving personal power. The lover was about integrating our sexuality, opening our hearts, and building healthy relationships. The magician is taking us into an integrative understanding of reality and life. This archetype really represents the quest for big picture understanding. It represents the search for truth, not just your personal relative truth, but the absolute truth, which can be found when you awaken. Inside of each and every one of us is a certain inner search. It's that niggling feeling that leaves you questioning, is this it? Isn't there more? It's like a latent memory inside of you that's like scratching at the head, like something that you can't quite reach, but it's calling. It's like an echo that you can only just faintly hear at the edge of your hearing, which is saying that there's more, there has to be more to reality than what I've been led to believe so far. And the answer is yes. You're right. There is far more to reality than you can ever imagine. It's a mind fuck when you start to step outside the limited little box that you've been living in. Because the horizons are in fact infinite. And when you touch that infinite experience, you will never be the same again in the most incredible way. The magician archetype symbolizes the profound and never-ending quest for greater understanding. So if you feel burdened by ignorance, by confusion, by not making sense of reality and the life that you're currently living, then this is the magician's call to adventure. And it's really up to you to decide if you are going to answer that call or if you're going to let it pass you by.